Coach, hey, thanks for joining me today on this Simple Coach to Coach interview. Appreciate you taking the time. Very grateful after you saw maybe my Fields of Dreams from Grove City that I didn't butcher your school on my tour.
No, it was good.
So,
It was
yeah,
good.
so very grateful for you agreeing to do this today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. You appreciate the time just to have a chat about D3 college soccer, which is a different world.
It is, and a great world. Like I'll just say very, very generally, everyone I've met and everyone I've talked to, it's amazing the amount of quality that's out there, both from a player perspective, but just the coaches. So,
Yeah, it's interesting because I think there's a foot of all coaches that want to be like pure soccer guys and like
yeah,
two substitutions and like all of this,
yeah,
but D3, there's this big battle like modern season, like splitting it and all that kind
yeah,
of craziness and rule changes and no overtime and but like
yeah,
the awkward part is D3 soccer is its own ecosystem
yeah.
and
It
it has
totally
to
is.
exist. It has to exist separately, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's okay. I, the I don't think Division 1 college anymore, the way sort of MLS operates and even USL to a certain extent, is that big of a feeder now for the professional game, but you almost have to give it that latitude. So if Division 1 wants to do things because it aligns more from a professional perspective, because that's sort of what they're thinking longer term for their players, that's okay. I just don't see that being
You're right.
connected to
You're
Division
right.
3.
But here's the cool part is everything runs downhill. Downhill, it's a tough
Yeah,
way to say it because Division 1, but we're not Division 1, scholarships, whatever,
yeah,
resources. But if they change the season for D1 out of
yeah,
for health and safety, you're really going to struggle to look at the entire D3. I mean, there's 415
yeah,
men's programs. Are you going to tell them that, well, you can't have a longer preseason and less time, more time
yeah,
between games because, well,
yeah,
what are you going to stand on? We changed it for
yeah,
Division 1 for health and safety. And
yeah,
I think it's going to happen
yeah,
uh, inevitably. It's going to come. I mean, they changed spring. I think they're
hmm,
going to change preseason and they're going to,
yeah.
they're talking about flexing a week on either
Yeah,
side.
yeah. I think
And if
that
they
would
do
be.
that, it'll be good.
I think you do that, and then you're in a great spot, right? You don't change the number of games that you can play. You just. I think those 2 weeks become gold at that point, right? Now you're operating with a little bit more latitude. You give a little bit more break for the players, right? They're not getting beaten so silly. So
Yeah.
anyhow, okay. Since we've already been rolling, hey, let me just jump in. You 18 years in that seat. Could you just talk a little bit about how you ended up there and what your soccer journey's been like?
Yeah. So just finishing 17, starting 18, and
Yep.
I was the assistant for 5 before. So, 22 seasons being here. I played here, graduated from Grove City in 97. I have a math ed degree. So I was a public school teacher for 9 years. So I was a high school coach at the age of 22, teaching middle school math, like the dream of all, I think, people in education. So did that, had a crazy awesome experience at a small school and changed schools, had the opportunity to come on as the assistant in '01 under my head coach, who was the AD at the time and I think needed an extra set of hands. So did that for 5 years and then was able to come here full time. We have exercise science now as
Mm-hmm.
a full blown major, but it was starting in '06. So all of our coaches were teaching as we started this major. So I got a master's in exercise science and was able to come on full time. The interesting thing, like, so I've been here for 17 years. My head coach was here for 34 seasons. So we've only
Wow.
had two coaches since '72. But that's crazy in itself. But then it goes another step. I don't know, if crazy is a good word, but we've been around since 1938. We've only had 6 head coaches since '38.
Wow.
And
Wow.
one guy was here for a season, the '71 season. So you could make an argument that we've only had five
Yeah.
in almost 85 years. So that's a cool I think there's goods and bads in that,
Yeah.
but the good is just the continuity, institutional knowledge, alumni base, and that I think has given us a lot of stability to be able to be successful. So,
Uh, I will say first that there's schools that have 6 coaches in like 7 years, um, which is definitely on the opposite end of the
yeah,
health the health meter. And then I'll say I think the coolest thing, and I can understand why, is just walking around your gymnasium and how much of a connection to your past you do have. Like it is not fleeting, you know.
yeah.
Like
So
you,
that's
that's
my
amazing to me.
mentor and the previous AD. That's Don Lyle's work, and that was like the signature on the end of his time here, and he really wanted to connect the history and Hall of Fames and research and history and photos. And yeah, if you walk around the building, it's kind of
It is
this
amazing.
documentation of all that. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Just from a history perspective, forget Grove City, forget just looking at the picture, everything that's, again, it just sort of connects your entire 100 plus year of athletic history. It's just amazing.
yeah,
All right, so this is a little bit, I'll ask you, so you've been around the game for a while. Do you think players are getting better?
yeah, yeah. Well, there's context to that question because like you could answer every question with it depends. I think the technical level of because what makes a player is it technique, is it
Yeah.
so I think the technical level of players um, is so much higher. And I look at the experience that these kids have. You know, you recruit an ECNL kid. It used to be like an elite college environment was special because most kids were training 2 days a week and playing a match on the weekends, even at the highest level of club in the country.
Hmm.
But you know, you talk to an ECNL kid or an MLS Next kid, you know, that's where a lot of us are trying to
Hmm.
fish that pond. And those kids are training 4 days a week. You know, they have 6 big trips a year. Some of them are getting on a coach bus and they're going places, and they've got a lot of support. Now, some ECNL is just it's relatively normal. I think that name will get watered down here pretty quick after we're removed from the DA dying off, but it's starting to water down the ECNL a little bit. But all
Hmm.
that to say, they have a better training environment. I think they're better players and they have more knowledge. Probably lack a little bit of grit, maybe lack a little bit of fitness. I think in some regards it's better fitness, but I don't know if they can go as long. A couple of weeks they start to break down quicker. So maybe that's a little bit of a difference, but I think technical level. And the question, I think a great question to ask is, if I took a player from my first year in '06, like whatever, a starter in '06, would he, if he was in this environment, do I think he would still start? And I think some kids transcend that, but other kids maybe not, right? Our
Hmm.
top 10 now is, I hope, is better than our top 10 20
Then,
years ago.
yeah,
And that's not
yeah,
a disservice to those guys because you still have, I mean, our leading scorer in our history played for me in '06. So if I brought that kid back in his same prowess at '06, yeah, he'd start for us. He scored almost 70
yeah,
college goals. So they're like, yeah,
yeah.
he's going to play. But and that's a question like, would they start? What would our 20th? I think so that's a difference. But I think the biggest difference is like our 25th player 20 years ago. I, I wouldn't even look at him probably now as a player. I wouldn't even consider him for my roster. So I
Yeah,
think the
yeah,
more it's deeper, it's
yeah,
much deeper. Technical levels higher, and I think the pool's much deeper.
yeah. What do you think tactically? Are they as tactically aware or?
Um, I think, yeah, in some ways, for sure, because I think, I mean, when did the NBC start the Prem? Like around like 12 or 13. Now you have
Yeah.
access. I mean, I graduated from high school in '93. Like the only soccer we were getting was World Cup and like Bundesliga highlights on like PBS on Saturday night or
Yep.
whatever, and you just watch the whole thing.
Soccer made in Germany.
Yeah, so like, I think guys understand it better, the language, the analytics. And you're an analysis guy. You're like playing around with passing stats, whatever. I
Hmm.
mean, I don't know. Do you have a subscription to The Athletic?
I
Like,
don't. I don't.
well, like I mean, I'd recommend it. Not necessarily like it's great. You have to pay for it, whatever. But they have like in-depth actual analysis where they're like breaking down like XG and XA, and
Hmm.
they've got diagrams and stills, and it's like super in depth. It's a 15-page article on
Hmm.
how Man City's pressing. Like you didn't
Yeah,
have
yeah,
access to that at all, and now you do. And I think there's enough kids that are somewhat interested. So again, like the average level, the average tactical knowledge of a kid is much better.
yeah. Interesting. Let me ask it, especially again, because it almost radiates when I walked around the gym. Like, how big of a deal is culture to you for your program? But then I'll just say the athletics in general. How big of a deal is culture at Grove City?
It's huge. So Christian school,
Mm.
and being involved in a faith-based environment is what we're selling here, and we want that to be at the forefront of what we're doing. You know, 18 to 22-year-olds don't all have the same faith journey. They're all at different spots, but we're transparent about who we are, and we are in the soccer program. And if a kid says, "Coach," you know, a lot of kids are coming here for that specific reason. They're looking at school, faith, and soccer, and they want an environment that has all of them. But sometimes you find a kid who the faith thing he wasn't thinking about, but we're just transparent about who we are, and if they want that, like we're gonna welcome them in and
Yeah.
connect with them. But I'm called to build the best Christian culture I can on my team, and I'm called to win as much as possible. That's
Hmm.
like mandates from
Yeah. The top on down.
my
Yeah.
chain of command. Yeah, absolutely. So it's wildly important for our department, and for us, it's big, like
Hmm.
equal. Because like the thought process is, and if you do some research on us, you'll figure out that we've been pretty darn good, but
Yeah. Yeah.
we haven't won our conference.
Yeah.
So I think like if you have good culture, one, you're going to be better on the field, but also like if you have a disappointment at the end, you still have a lot of amazing things. Everybody's
Yeah.
pulling in the same direction. They're galvanized, and that makes the experience better, I think.
Yeah. 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 What that So I talk to a lot of schools of faith, right? Just generally, they all have some connection to faith, and obviously, the one that I always think of is Messiah, and
Yeah.
just how, I mean, it's critical, it's core to who they are. And can I ask? I mean, this might be a weird question for a soccer
No, go
thing,
ahead.
but I just thought of it. Like, do you have experience of bringing players into the program who, again, they might not have thought about their faith at all to whatever extent, and then at the end of 4 years, they're all bought in. They have newfound faith, and yeah, almost like a you know
Yeah.
growing
Uh,
into it, right?
yeah. So, like, I think, I mean, I'm an example of that. Like, I came to Grove City. I mean, I was a believer,
Hmm.
but you're 18 and you have like a warped, maybe slightly warped sense of what your faith is, and you get an environment and you learn some things and you grow. And like, we haven't had anybody where that we've had a conversion and we've baptized anybody like in Creek. So we haven't done
Yeah.
that. But I think guys come here and they grow. So I was actually talking with a colleague this morning about some things going on in his coaching world, and he's in the right place, and he's there, and he's working with soccer, but he's also working with life, and we're all doing that as coaches. We get to work with soccer and we get to work with life. Faith is the foundation for us here.
Hmm.
And soccer is just the way we've connected it all. So we get in the car, we close the doors, and we drive down the road of life. But the car is soccer, so like we just get to connect with people. So what a better way to
Yeah.
figure out life than with 30 other 18 to 22-year-olds who are either really strong in their faith or searching about something in their faith, and they're playing the game and they're living in the dorm and they're trying to figure out school, and dating relationships and jobs
Yeah.
and all that stuff. And it's a pretty amazing experience. And I think, guys, our environment, I think on the soccer team is really good for that, but also the environment here at Grove City in general.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great people here, faculty, staff,
Yeah.
students, and it's a great place. You talk about culture, C word, right? We have core values on campus. Community is one of our core values, and that's
Yeah.
one that a lot of people say, well, Grove City just feels different because people genuinely like you, they want you to be successful, and they're here to support you. And I think we're trying to do the same thing. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
long answer, but yeah, we have guys growing a ton.
Yeah. What? So I just for the record, anyone I've spoken to about Grove City has never said a bad word about the school. Like, which is,
That's good. Stop talking to people because you might get the bad one.
yeah, but but it is surprising, right? Because there's some, usually I hear, oh, you at school, I usually hear something that people is whatever the reason is, right?
Yeah.
They have a negative impression. It doesn't happen with you guys, so but what where do you find most of your recruits? Where do you go to? I mean, are you going nationally, or are you just sort of focused
Yeah.
regionally?
So the median distance, I don't know if all coaches would have this number, but ours is about 200 miles for campus.
Hmm.
So our team is representative of that. It's maybe a little jaded towards within 200, but we've got two kids from Colorado, a kid from Texas, Florida, two from North Carolina, Tennessee, kid from Chicago who's moved to Vermont. So we get some guys from outside of that. And
Hmm.
then we've got a lot of Western PA kids. And it's all
Hmm.
over. We don't get a lot of cold recruiting kids. We have a couple of those where we found kids at showcases or online or whatever.
Hmm.
It's a lot of legacy kids. My high school teacher went to Grove City.
Hmm.
Got some brothers that have come through, and just some interesting connections. And recruiting, I mean, I'm a believer, so God's providence, His hand is over all the stuff we're doing.
Hmm.
But if you weren't there, you would think it's random. Like you pick your head up at a showcase and you watch a kid kick a ball well, you write his name down, you
Hmm.
put your head down, he gets nutmegged. You maybe wouldn't have written it down, but then you call him. Like, there was a kid who came to Grove City, and the reason he looked at Grove City is because another coach didn't email him back. So he
Yeah.
was like almost offended by that. So we
Yeah.
started, and we had played them. They clicked
Yeah.
on a link, went to what we had, liked what we had, and then started looking at Grove City. And I emailed him back, and this kid came. So like, it's a lot of those kind of connections. I think a
Yeah.
lot of recruiting's like that. And the interesting thing about Grove City, so faith-based school, so people got to be interested in that. And our average ACT is like 27, our average SAT is 1250. So we're not super like, it's not the
Yeah.
UAA Carnegie Mellon,
Yeah.
but it's pretty good. So like, I go to a random showcase, I watch 22 kids running around, I pick a kid out, and we also recruit positionally. So like we're
Yeah.
looking for certain things.
Yeah.
So I pick a kid out. He's got to have the academics, and he's got to want to come to a faith-based school, and then that's kind of precludes a little bit. So
Yeah.
it's kind of all over the place, but we've tried to go more national a little bit as we can too. So
Hmm. It's got to be a little bit easier now since you can basically pick tournaments where, anywhere across the country where you know that the talent level is going to be at a certain level, which for the longest time wasn't the case. Hey, just really broadly, could you talk about the President's Athletic Conference that you're a part of?
yeah,
Just competitive level teams, that sort of thing?
yeah. So it's crazy competitive, and like all you have to do is look at the conference champions. I think the last 7 years, there's been six different champions. So Thomas More used to be in our conference; they're no longer in. So you go like Geneva, Thomas More, uh, Westminster, W&J twice, Bethany, Franciscan, and like any conference that doesn't have just one team winning it every other year it says a lot. Anybody can win the conference. So I think it's really competitive. We're now at 11 teams. I think because Allegheny's in now, so it's good and it's pretty regional. It's mostly I-79 corridor, Western PA, a little shoot off here and there. Franciscan's in Ohio, but not far. Bethany's in West Virginia, but not far. So like travel's not bad. Yeah, so it's super competitive, and it's interesting too from a coaching standpoint. There's a couple of guys that have been around a long time, and then there's a couple of guys that have just been like freshly minted. Like we have guys who have less. We have in our conference we have a group of guys that have less than 5 years experience.
Yeah.
And then there's a guy with 30, a guy with 25, 28 at Westminster Garish, and then I have 18. Gary Dunda's been around a long time at Geneva, so you kind of have like it's almost by modal a little bit. So it's interesting in that regard too, but competitive. And I watched your thing with Barron and the argument. I think Dan used the statement one bid league, like AQs, right? So we've only had, and I've looked at this before because strength of schedule is huge, and I'm sure you've done some research on all that.
Yeah.
But like since we've had an AQ since '08, I think. Mm-hmm. So on the men's and women's side, that's 15 tries. I think we've only gotten 2 at-large bids across men and women out of 30 tries. So that says a lot.
Wow.
Pretty much an AQ league.
Yeah. That's well, and look, I think too, right? Like geography has a lot to do with that, right? I mean, I'm just being realistic in terms of like if you got to play the best of teams, it's for somebody who's in central PA, western PA, it gets a little bit more complicated to find those really good teams because then otherwise you're stuck in a van or a bus for, hours and days.
Yeah. We're Great Lakes, but now with some of the things you can go east, but OAC, NCAC, but like SOS is, you can plan it really, really well.
You still lose.
Yeah. So like, you have to schedule 6. First of all, you have to flip your schedule. Yeah. And you have to have a good year, and you have to because scheduling's a nightmare. Like you call somebody, he doesn't call you back, you wait, you change it, you do this. But then perfect example is like Ohio Wesleyan's one of the best teams historically in the country, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So, but you play them last year, and they were your SOS game. But they didn't have a great strength of schedule. They didn't have a great winning record last year. Yeah. Now you're gonna absorb the North Coast, but that's only a third. It's not the 2/3. So those things happen. And if you do that, or you happen to have, a down year or whatever, and then they drop you, but then the next year you're really good, it's tough.
Yeah. Well, that's true. That's a great point. A lot of things have to align. If that's the game you're playing. Right? If you're, hey, how do I get an at-large? Everything needs to align your way. Everything needs to align, and that's obviously hard to do.
Now, I think 25 years ago, you could have you could talk to coaches who've been around, and maybe they'll dispute it. And it wasn't quite the old boys club, but now it's not because it's data driven. I mean, I've had the benefit of being on the rack a couple times, and it's so data driven, and it has to clear not only the regional committee, it has to clear the national committee, and they'll kick stuff back to you because they have to be able to defend it. Yeah. And there's a conversation it's not quite going to the computer like Big Blue to do it, but they have formulas that they're trying to, and the NCAA is looking at some of those. They've piloted them, I think, in volleyball, and they're looking at trying to pilot it in soccer, where it would take any human element out of it. So see, and that's the problem. It's tough.
Well, at that point, everything becomes a number, and then how do you reduce everything to a number, right? And that's really hard to do. Like I said, and this has been my thing from last year. Right, a team that goes undefeated, that under any circumstance, it is very difficult to do in a season. They should be rewarded with a bid, even if their strength of schedule isn't necessarily there. Right, isn't at that level. You throw down it in a computer, that might not be the case, right? And it's just going to be no, strength of schedule bad, right?
Yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah, it's challenging.
Um, let me. Sorry, I'm bouncing all around. All right, so good season. What is your overall assessment of it? What somebody says, "Hey, how did things go?" What would you say?
Um, yeah, I mean, unprecedented. That's the first time we've run the table. We went 10-0 in the conference, so that was
Mm-hmm.
really good. We were excited about that, which is a tough thing to do. But Groundhog's Day, because we were the number one seed and we had, we came up against a really good Bethany team. It was a great match in the semis, and we lost in penalties. So like, it's an unfortunate thing because you're evaluated by two games essentially. Do you win the semi? Do you win the final? We didn't. So, you go back to the drawing board again after a great year. The other thing, too, I think, disappointed with our non conference. So we did well in conference, which is great.
Yeah.
But non conference, we struggled a bit, had a bit of a bad patch during early September. Like right after the opening weekend, it kind of had a bad patch of games. But yeah, overall, great group of kids. We were where we needed to be. Home game in the semifinal, so that was a success. We just, came up short.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you about that one just
Yeah.
because. But yeah, we could jump to it. All right, so this is the same place, regular season. You beat Bethany, who I still hold a grudge against from my days of playing at Mount Union. So I'm excited that you beat them at home, and then in the first round of the conference tournament, you lose on penalty kicks after going 3-3.
Yeah.
So I just ask, like, what? Tell me about the game and what was, aside from the score, what was the difference?
Yeah.
What
So,
changed?
so if you watch, I mean, if you're interested in like, I mean, you watch a lot of college soccer, go find that game and watch it because it was crazy fun to be involved in. Fog was rolling in. It was cold, but there was like a fog there, big crowd. Um, they went up 1-0, then 1-1. They went up 3-1, then 2-2. And we went up 3-2 and scored like, which was our goal of the year. If you look at Instagram and scroll down, you'll see it. Just an absolute banger. We concede a set, like broken set piece goal 3-3. So Bethany's really, really good. Big roster, a lot of foreign influence. I think, like, in that regard, they have a bit of a pattern of play and what they try to do, but like, they're just different. And there's a lot of different players involved, and they're kind of a lot of really good individuals that on their day when they put it together, they're really, really good. I mean, they won the year before and they made it to the final this year, so you can't knock that at all. So it's not like they're easy to scout in that regard. They play a diamond 4-4-2, which we don't see very often, and they're
Hmm.
good at it, and it's a little chaotic.
Yeah.
And we play a 4-3-3. We go around the block as much as possible, try and play in the flanks. They're pretty athletic. So the hard part is, yeah, we beat them in the first in the regular season 4-2. So you're like 7-5 aggregate. It's a pretty interesting,
Yeah.
two-legged tie if you look at it that way.
Yeah.
But we're at home. I think the other thing that's interesting, first overtime game of the year because no overtime.
Yeah.
Um, we play a ton of guys uh, all the time traditionally. Like that's kind of our style, my style. So fresh, but then we try to shorten the bench in overtime, which I think maybe we didn't have the legs we needed in like the second overtime. And then we're at home and we're shooting first in penalties. So you like your chances statistically.
Yeah.
You also like your chances when you send, your two-time All-Region player, academic All-American, to the penalty spot to
To the
shoot first,
spot. Yeah.
who's the fifth leading scorer in the history of the college, which is a great spot to be
Yeah.
in. But unfortunately, he went over with it, put it across the street. I think it skipped the bar. But so now you're down. They score their first, so you're down and you're
Yeah.
chasing.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
Oh my
There's like a
gosh.
huge, and I and I'll be because anybody can do this research, like, and I'll be transparent about it. We in our conference we've won my winning percentage is about 76% in conference play. But in postseason, it's about 20%. And that's including
Wow.
some generous ties there for PK loss.
Yeah.
Like, you look around and you look in the mirror in the morning. Is it me? Is it us? Is it people? But you know what? Like, that's life. You have to, if one of my players, said, well, I'm giving up, or this is done, I quit, or whatever, like, I would not accept that from him. I can't accept that from myself. So we go back to the drawing board every year and we try and figure out ways and I've changed a lot. I've changed everything in my program almost in the last 17 years, and I've changed a lot in the last 5. And we continue to try and push. Can we put guys in tougher situations mentally where they're prepared for it? And that's what we're working on. We just, it's just what we have to get through, and we have to find a way to overcome it. And that's what we're working towards. So,
Can I ask? This is totally random, but can you give me an example or a couple of examples that you mentioned you change a lot, like you purposely change
no,
over
I
time,
wouldn't
like
say. Well, first of all, I don't do anything without analyzing it and thinking
sure.
about it.
I hope so.
Yeah, and like, it's not quite. I mean, I use the term I move like a glacier. I'm not that slow, but like I need some
Yeah.
analysis. But like, just a little bit of style of play, a little bit of how we train. Our roster size has increased to create more of a competitive environment. We It's been 7 years, but like we have a really robust sports science approach to how we train and how we do everything. Um, we changed like some things. We try to change some things mentally. Um, what we do from a mental approach, like before every day we train and before every day we play, and we continue to do that this spring. This spring we had a win loss table. So we picked an activity every single training session, and we had a win and a loss for it, and we posted the table, and it was public whether you got wins or you got losses. So guys are
Hmm.
coming to training having lost 5 competitive activities in a row, and sometimes we end this session with 9 versus 9, and sometimes it's
Yeah.
11v11. But we would pick one activity. Well, there's a guy walking into training that's gotten 5 L's in a row, and
Yeah.
he comes with an edge and he wants to get a W. And that
Yeah.
changed. I mean, I don't think our training's ever been bad and it's never been not competitive. But like this spring, a guy who has to look at this table every day on his computer and look that he's lost 5 in a row, he comes with a bit of an edge and he wants to win.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like, I mean, those are the kind of things. It's really like change could be like it's relative.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah. Yeah.
it a small
Yeah.
tweak? Is it a big tweak? So,
Yeah. That would be the win loss thing is a big tweak, like to me, right? Like just I wish we did that more. Like in hindsight, like just
I mean, it's
it drives, right? It
yeah.
drives you.
And it's Anson Doran's competitive culture
Yeah,
out in North
yeah,
Carolina. I mean, I'm sure maybe other people were doing it. He got it from
yeah,
Dean Smith, but like,
yeah,
we're not that level.
yeah,
But it's something that we're going to try to keep. And
yeah,
what was funny and really interesting, we had a 9v9 tournament. So, 8 plus the keeper, and we were able to do that because of our numbers. But we separated the table, in thirds
mm-hmm,
based on win loss percentage.
mm-hmm,
And then we used those teams, and it almost worked out perfect where we had a left back, a right back, a center back, 2 midfielders. We
yeah,
could make a lineup, and that's how we picked the teams. And it was almost like Premier
yeah,
League,
yeah,
League One, and it made for some interesting conversations, but also some interesting battles. And that the next
yeah. I'm
tournament when
sure.
we picked that. So those are the kind of things that we're trying to do, and we're not standing still.
Yeah, yeah. No, you can't do that, right? If you're still coaching the way you were 17 years ago, you're done, right? Like you've been done for a while.
Yeah.
So, um, all right. Any highlights come to mind from your season? Like, is there anything that you were like, wow, that was awesome? I always say, like, there are those moments in the season where they're like, almost, I don't want to say turning points, but like these inflection points of, hey, this is really good, or oh my gosh, we're in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I think being able to get the 10-0, it's funny too. We go back to the overtime thing, and we didn't have any ties. So, a lot of your turning points are going to be we won that game in overtime or we stole that
Yeah.
game from somebody. But that's kind of off. But I think like away at W&J was really they're tough to play against at their place at night. Second game of a doubleheader, it's a little later, and they're really good and they're pretty robust. So like we won that game 2-1, I think, and that was a tight one at the end. I think that was our last conference game, so like that got us to it, and it was like not looking great. Was 1-1 for a bit if I remember correctly. So like that was a pretty cool moment. Yeah, but like the group of guys that I have, I could probably say this every year, but they're amazing. They're super good friends. Like I love just going to work every day and coaching them. We have a new assistant who it's like really his first full time coaching gig, and he's doing an amazing job. And he's learning on the fly, but he's brought a lot of really cool energy, some cool ideas, and he pushes me, and he's fun to work with, and I'm mentoring him along this. So that's been pretty neat to be involved with. We've got a great staff, so like that's fun to be around. So yeah, but there wasn't really like, one specific moment like we won this game.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the middle of the season, and that turned things.
Yeah.
It wasn't nothing that I quite remember.
Yeah. I was just looking. Yeah, maybe there was that moment just because of like your out of conference versus in conference performance a little bit. And yeah. Hey, so he's a Calvin grad. That's not too shabby.
Yeah,
Your assistant,
yeah,
Eli.
yeah,
Eli? Yeah.
yeah. He played reserves there for their team, but
Mm-hmm.
was with them for a while and trained a bit with the first team and had a little bit of experience there. But he's got a exercise science background
Yeah.
and
See that.
super detail oriented. In that regard we speak the same language, so it's good. He got married this summer, moved. His wife and he live in town. He's kind of embracing small town living with both feet. So it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, oh, that's cool. That's cool. All right. So, obviously over, but what was your intent for the spring, for your spring sessions?
Yeah, so we have a game model that we like really try to imprint on the guys. We've tried to simplify it and just cement that. So we kind of spin the wheel of our game model, and we do a lot of sessions specifically geared towards that. So that's always something, because I think, yeah, there's this mental block, but we can always be better players and understand how we want to unlock possession problems and those kind of things. So we really worked on that, and then really just trying to force our guys to be competitive, and that was a huge focus, and to put them in situations like where this game matters. It's a Tuesday in April and it's raining and you're playing and it's a throwaway session, but that that matters, right? So trying to say like this session matters, the next 20 minutes really matters. I'm going to put everything out here to try and win. Trying to imprint that into the guys, and I think it worked. I'm going to find out. You can contact me in a couple of months, but I could make the argument just because, like, we could come to the same situation. We could be having this conversation a year from now and losing PKs again. That doesn't mean it wasn't effective, right?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's the one. And maybe I say this because I've been on the wrong end of that, but you're measuring an entire season by 90 minutes. That's tough.
Yeah. It boils
So,
down, right? Like all
yeah.
that boils down to those PKs or whatever the case may be.
Yeah,
Right? Like
yeah.
that's,
Well, and you try to, we talked a little bit about before we started recording. Like you look at possession stats, and you're trying to
yeah.
see what possession theories and like, it all matters. I've tried to boil down statistically what it takes for us to win. Not quite Moneyball, but like I've analyzed because we have some stats from like
Yeah.
huddle assist. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I know over the last 5 seasons, every time we've won, statistically what we've done, and every time we've lost, statistically what we've
Yeah.
done. So we have some objective metrics. It's not like we try to get to the final third and connect. Like when you're playing that
Yeah.
game, like 3 passes is a point. So you get close to your buddies and you go 1, 2, 3. But at the
Yeah.
same time, like I know if we connect, north of 40 passes in the final third, we're probably going to win the game.
Yeah.
So we try to get to the final third as much as possible and create as much as we can. And if we
Yeah.
can, if you connect less than 30 passes, or I don't know the exact number, I've got it written down, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and so we played Slippery Rock 2 springs ago when I first started really looking at this. Slippery Rock down the road, it's a D2
Yeah.
school. We tied them 1-1. They connected 16 passes in our final third in the entire game. But it was a 1-1 game.
Yeah.
So you could leave that game and say, okay, we didn't play that well because we tied 1-1 defensively. But if I look at that from a 100-foot view, they only connected 16 passes
16
in
passes, yeah.
our defensive third. So defensively, we played really well. Now, 30 seconds of that game, we played like crap because we gave up a 6-pass string. They went through, cut us apart, cut one back from the end line, and scored. But for the other 89 minutes and 30 seconds defensively, we were really solid.
It's solid. Yeah.
So that's the problem, and I think, that philosophically, that's the kind of challenge with soccer, right?
Well,
like
that's
not
the beauty
turning
of it.
on
That's the beauty of it as well, right? Because you can
yeah.
come up with, and I notice this, like you could come up with every stat and say, which was sort of like, again, that passing stats that I did. It's like there's no guarantee that the better the passing that team wins. There's no predictor for it. There's a likelihood, but the game of soccer sometimes throws those stats out the window just because it can.
The best part of soccer is you could get destroyed and win 1-0. The worst part about soccer is you could destroy someone and lose 1-0.
Yeah, and lose 1-0. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the beauty of it. Hey, a couple more, and then I'll let you go. Is there what's your recruiting class like? Actually, what's your recruiting class like? And I'm curious, like how many guys do you have graduating this year?
So roster size is absurd this fall just because, but I have 13 seniors this fall. I have a junior graduating early, and I have a 5th year. So I'm going to lose 15 to graduation. So I have 9 freshmen. So our roster size is going to be 41, which is, I have no business being there, and I get it. But I've been planning for like a class of 13 to graduate for a couple years because I don't want to be gutted.
Yeah.
I think our roster, our Magic roster size is like 36. And after this fall of 24, we'll be back down to 36. So I've just planned for that.
Yeah.
But we have 9 guys coming in. We lose 15 to graduation. Cool story, like our 5th year, which maybe certain colleges have more than others and people are doing it differently.
Yeah.
We have a little bit of graduate studies. It's just hard. But our 5th year, a big reason he's staying around is one of his brothers will be a freshman, one of his brothers will be a junior, and he'll be a 5th year.
Oh,
So,
no way.
Yeah, that's
How
pretty cool.
awesome is that?
Yeah, great family. Yeah, so that'll be fun. We don't play a back 3, but I've threatened to play they're all defenders pretty much, so I've threatened to play
Yeah, like
a back
we're going
3
all
just for
three,
fun.
3 center, 3 backs.
Yeah.
That would be fun to watch. I'd be watching your games just for that. Like if you have an announcer, like how much harder that would be for them, right?
Yeah.
That's great. Last one for you, and I don't want you to become like fodder. Like I don't want you to say anything that's going to put on someone's inspiration board like, hey, look at what Grove City said. We should pummel them the next time we play them.
I think everybody's I don't think I have to say anything. I think everybody
Yeah, you're already there.
yeah. Everybody wants to beat us, yeah.
Yeah. What sort of I mean, do you have any goals, outline goals that you could share for the fall? Like what you're hoping, I'll just say accomplish, or yeah, what
Yeah, I
you're.
mean, I think we want to win the league, and statistically, like I said when we talked earlier, like 6 different teams have won the league.
Yeah,
W and J went back to back, and I think 19 and 21 COVID, so they went back
yeah,
to back. Um, so like that just says that anybody that's in the hunt can win it.
yeah,
Bethany won the league as a fifth seed
yeah,
in the fall of 21. So like it's open, and I don't think anybody would dispute that. There's a couple of teams that are bringing in really big, talented classes. You can look at them on Instagram, so they're gonna make some noise, I think. So, but I think we want to win the league, and that's not to say like that it's going to be easy or that we're going to win the league, but that's what we want to do. Like
yeah.
we are looking for that. The last time we won the league was '05, before we had an AQ. Yeah, yeah, and like in '05 we didn't have an AQ and we won the conference in the conference tournament, and the runner up went because we were Pool B. W&J went on SOS. So I was an assistant on that team, so that kind of stings a little bit, but
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah, maybe. I mean, you're due, uh, right? Like,
probability
yeah, the
eventually.
probability you're due. Like,
Yeah,
you just you gotta go and make it happen. I guess it's can't let Bethany beat you on PKs. I,
no,
I, all right, can I ask you a question about Bethany? You said
yeah,
they have a heavy international influence. Back
yeah,
in my day, they were loaded with some really good Irish players.
yeah.
I
What
mean,
year
do
did
they
you graduate from Mount Union?
90?
Okay, yeah. So traditionally they'd have a Caribbean spine.
Uh
Traditionally,
huh.
like I graduated from Grove City from high school in '93, but Grove City '97. They
Yeah.
won a national championship in
Yeah.
'94. But
Yeah.
yeah, traditionally they'd have a Caribbean spine. I think like Bethany's a unique place. John Cunningham founded their program and was
Yeah.
around from the late '60s all the way
Yeah.
through early like 2000. So he was
Yeah. Yeah.
for a
He
long
was there
time.
forever.
Yeah, and I think just like they're a really small school in a really small town.
Yeah.
Um, so I think like you're trying to find students, right? You want to fill your beds. So that was a great
Yeah.
way. And there's a lot of every school in the country is trying to fill their beds, and everybody's doing a little differently.
Yeah.
They've been able to do it through, now there's been different pockets. It's been waves of it.
Yeah.
Um, you know, a couple of coaches ago, Cause, who was there from like '01 through '08 or something like that. I mean, he was from Toronto, so he had
Canadian
10
players.
Canadian freshmen one year, something
Yeah.
like that. So, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
they and every school has a different niche,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they work it, and they've been able to work it to some
Well, that's
some
like
success.
North Park University in Chicago, right? Like
Yeah.
it's the same.
Swedish players or
Swedish,
Norwegian or
like I
something.
mean, Swedish, Norwegian, just and their freshman class, at least in Instagram, they're all from the places that are spelled with the O with the little O up top.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I get it. It's not a
No,
complaint or anything like that. I
no,
just
it's
remember,
like find your niche and find
yeah,
whatever vein of coal or gold, sorry, that you can
yeah,
mine
mine,
and
yeah.
and get it.
Yeah. And in some respects, it might be a little bit easier because they might not be competing with anyone for the kid, right? Like they found this pipeline of bringing in players, and might be a little bit easier for them.
Yeah, you get one, then you get
Yep,
two, and then it
two,
makes sense
yeah,
just to go there.
yeah, yeah. All right, Coach, this was fantastic. Really did enjoy it. Appreciate the time. One of these days, I'll have to get back out there.
Yeah,
I do my regular job. I go out to Western PA, hence my stopping by in Grove City and having played you guys at some point in the '80s. I love your stadium. It used to be all grass. I remember that's where we played. It
Yeah.
hasn't moved at all, right? Like
No, they've
it's
changed some of the hillside and stuff, but
yeah,
and
yeah,
the turf's a blessing. The grass was
yeah,
great when it was great, but it wasn't
yeah.
great when it
I
wasn't.
don't. I think we played you late, like you are late out of conference game, and I mean, if I remember, it was just like a mud bog slash. I mean, classic '80s game, right? Like
Yeah.
just mud and bumps and whatever. But it was. But yeah, love it. I'll definitely have to make it a point to get out there again. And again, if anyone passes by, stop by the gym. If you're a history geek like me, stop by the gym and just walk around the halls, and you'll see some really really cool stuff, pictures and sweaters and all that kind of stuff. Really really cool. So but again, thank you very much. Really grateful for your time, and,
Yeah.
and appreciate you us connected.
No problem. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. One of those tools and a great starting point is to check out Discover College Soccer Study Table. Now, I've interviewed Matt Baer, who's the founder of Discover College Soccer, before. Really great guy. And you've probably seen his podcast. I've referred to it and recommend anybody to go to check out his interviews with coaches at all levels, that is specifically designed to talk about the recruiting process and the different college programs. He's not talking about them himself, he's letting the coaches speak. So with all of that information that he's gathered, he's put together this study table that is a program to help you with your recruiting process, that's complete with video course on the recruiting process from start to finish. He has these that are updated spreadsheets that are updated monthly, with contact information and details about every program in the country. That alone is worth its weight in salt. He has a bunch of other resources, email templates, checklists to help you guide you through your own process. Now, the best part is, whereas you can pay thousands of dollars to some of these recruiting services, you can get a lifetime subscription to the study table for less than one night in a tournament hotel. The best part of it is that Matt has his own soccer experience. He's a former college player and college coach. He's talked to over 150 coaches in just the last year, and he has some great insights and has created something that I think is probably very, very useful to a lot of you, and best of all, you get to save time and save money. Now look, I don't recommend people that I don't know or I haven't come to know. I've talked to Matt, as I mentioned, on a number of occasions, and he's probably has the most insightful and, I'll just say, thorough understandings of the recruiting process. Not because he's made it up, but because he's asked coaches across the college game. And he's taken all of that, figured out what the best recommendations from all of those discussions that he has, and put that together into the study table. So if you don't want to spend thousands on recruiting, on a recruiting service, and you have the mind to do it yourself, the Discover College Soccer Study Table is for you. So in the description, you can find a link that will get you 20% off on a lifetime subscription. Or if you go to discovercollegesoccer.com, click on the study table to register and use the discount code SIMPLE, you get to save 20% on your subscription. So with that, good luck.